After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. A centurion there had a slave whom he valued highly and who was ill and close to death. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and heal his slave. When they came to Jesus, they appealed to him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy of having you do this for him, for he loves our people, and it is he who built our synagogue for us." And Jesus went with them. But when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore, I did not presume to come to you, but only speak the word, and let my servant be healed. For I am a man set under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and the slave does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at the centurion, and turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." When those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health. Soon afterwards, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized all of them, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favorably on his people." This word about him spread throughout Judea and all the surrounding country. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
I confess to you that I don't like this text. It makes me a little twitchy, and luckily we are not here to worship me this morning, but I just want to say this was not an easy passage for me this week, because let's start with our slave-owning centurion. We can understand all day long that slavery in the first century world was categorically different from the way that we perpetuated it here in this country for over 400 years. But biblical slavery is still terrible, and I'm not going to admire it or anyone who benefited from it. But I can try to remember that Luke was speaking to a different context than the one that we are in today. And yes, it is good that the centurion valued highly his slave. But remember, this was likely because when you buy a human being to do your work, you want them to be healthy enough to keep working for you. I don't really like our centurion. Then you have the religious leaders. "He is worthy of having you do this for him, for he loves our people, and it is he who built our synagogue for us." So let's break that down. He is worthy. For religious leaders in Jesus' day, what would make someone worthy is their adherence to the statutes and traditions of the faith, not because they paid for a sanctuary renovation in a capital campaign. Yes, in the next few years, sorry, Robin's getting very nervous right now. In the next few years, we will have a capital campaign here, and I pray that it will be a successful one. But I want to just state very clearly, the amount of money you contribute will not be what makes you worthy of receiving God's healing. Were the religious leaders afraid that the centurion would stop pledging to First Capernaum if they didn't give him special access to Jesus? I get all fired up about this passage, partly because I'm sick and tired of seeing religious leaders in this country try to curry favor with people in power and people with money, and partly because I worry I'm guilty of the same. As the religious leaders point out how worthy of healing the centurion is, they say, "He loves our people." What does that love look like? What are the limits of how you love people when you will snitch on those same people to an anonymous tip line, and when you'll deport those same people, when you'll deny health care to them because of their gender identity or sexual orientation or economic status, when you'll withhold food and medicine and aid to global partners, when you use the government to sue private companies who value and hire for the diversity reflected in our country, when you try to kill those same people you claim to love because the government tells you to do it because you're a centurion. What are the limits of our love? I know I'm not giving the centurion a fair reading in my heart right now because of what is happening in the news. Who knows? Maybe the centurion was leading the resistance. Maybe he had converted to Judaism and was subverting the unconstitutional commands that Caesar and his henchmen were sending his way so he could gain access to treasury records. I don't know. But Luke doesn't tell us that. If he's a centurion, it's because he's good at obeying Caesar's rules. Luke tells us the centurion agreed with me that he was not worthy of having Jesus visit his home. "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you, but only speak the word and let my servant be healed." We're told Jesus was amazed. Another translation is Jesus admired him. "I tell you," he said, not even in Israel have I found such faith." I don't want Jesus to admire centurions. They were leaders of the Roman occupation, the people who carried out Rome's unjust and often cruel orders. They were the ones who subjugated people all across the Roman Empire. Remember also that Jesus will die because religious leaders align with Rome. They hand Jesus over on charges of sedition, which is conduct or speech that incites people to rebel against the authority of a state. Religious leaders hand Jesus over to protect their own privilege and power by using the tools of politics. When the religious leaders said the centurion loved our people, that suggests they might not be as focused on how he loves other people. And that language is worth noting because we still use it today. We hear politicians and Christian leaders say that if we love our family and the people who are like us first, then maybe we can also love people who are a little further away from us, if only there's enough love or money to go around. When we hear that, we ought to be skeptical and a little angry. We should note who they're trying to include and exclude with their commands about what they think Christianity tells us to do. Elsewhere in the gospel, we'll hear it in a few weeks, a man comes to Jesus asking just who exactly counts as a neighbor we're supposed to love. And Jesus tells the story of someone outside the Jewish faith, a Samaritan, who saves a stranger on the side of a wilderness road far outside of town after religious leaders had passed him by. out loud to every single person out there right now who's in the process of dismantling structures of safety and feeding and healthcare and the rule of law, especially the ones who claim to be doing it because they're Christian. But the truth is, it has to start here with us. As a community, we have to continue to commit to seeing every person as our neighbor, deserving of God's love and care. But it has to start even closer than that. It has to start in our hearts. It has to start in my heart. Because as you heard earlier, I would have been a very unhappy disciple if I'd been with Jesus when he turned toward the centurion's house, offering to help him because he had built a synagogue. Who would the centurion be today in our lives? The person that we could justify all day long that they aren't worthy of healing. Think about it. Would it be Elon Musk's college-aged, proudly racist intern who was breaking into our social security system? Would I want Jesus to go heal him? Perhaps you need to change the illustration to a different political agenda in your heart than the one that is in mine. Maybe it's Hillary Clinton's secretary. I don't know who it is. And I wondered if it was an extreme illustration, but I don't think it is. By healing the slave of a centurion, Jesus shows us that God's love is not ours to withhold. God will love and heal who God will love and heal. Thanks be to God. By healing the widow's son, someone who is already dead, Jesus shows us that God's love is stronger even than death. And that gives us hope when we see death all around us. The great preacher William Sloane Coffin once said, "Hope resists, hopelessness adapts." Hope resists, hopelessness adapts. Jesus calls us to be in the hope business, resisting our own tendencies to declare people unworthy of God's concern as surely as we resist that action from others. So we continue caring for our neighbors. We continue celebrating the differences between us that make us unique. We continue resisting ideologies that deny the humanity of anyone, because everyone is made in the image of God. As we continue this work, hear a portion of this poem by Maya Angelou. My wish for you is that you continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue, in a society dark with cruelty, to let people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Continue to let your eloquence elevate people to heights they had only imagined. Continue to remind the people that each is as good as the other and that no one is beneath nor above you. Continue to remember your own young years and look with favor upon the lost and the least and the lonely. Continue to put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and defenseless. Continue to take the hand of the despised and diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Continue to plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and the infirm, and count that as a natural action to be expected. Continue to let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Amen.